The first roar tore through the night like thunder, deep, guttural, ancient. John Miller froze, his flashlight trembling in his hand. Out there, beyond the flickering edge of his campfire, the shadows moved. Eyes, golden, unblinking, circled him in the darkness. Locals had warned him. They said this part of the Serengeti was cursed. A place ruled by a pride so ferocious that even seasoned rangers turned back at the sight of their tracks. They called them the Ghost Pride, because those who dared step into their territory never came back. But John wasn't a man who ran from fear. He'd spent years studying lions across Africa, tracking their movements, decoding their behavior, yet nothing intrigued him like this legend. Were they truly killers, or misunderstood survivors protecting their land? So against every warning, he pitched his tent in the heart of their domain. Alone. No backup. No weapons, just his cameras, his notebooks, and a will stronger than reason. The first night, they came. He could hear them before he saw them, heavy paws padding through dry grass, low rumbles vibrating the air. His tent shook as something massive brushed against it. Then came a sound that pierced straight through his chest, a long, drawn-out growl, so close he could feel the breath behind the canvas. Most men would have fled. John hit record. For hours, the pride tested him, circling, roaring, waiting for him to run. But he didn't move. He sat still, heart pounding, whispering softly into the recorder. They're curious, not angry, just watching. When dawn finally broke, the lions were gone. Only paw prints surrounded his tent, each one the size of his hand. John stepped out, barefoot on the cold earth, and looked toward the endless golden plain. Somewhere out there, the Ghost Pride was watching him. And in that moment, standing in the silence of the Serengeti, John made a promise. He would find them. He would understand them. Even if it meant becoming a ghost himself. The camera light blinked red. The legend had just become real. The camera light blinked red, and from that moment on, every second became survival. By the second night, the Ghost Pride returned. Their roars rolled across the plains like thunderclaps. John barely slept, clutching his recorder as the sound of claws dragged against his tent. At times, he could hear them breathing, heavy, close, deliberate. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but he stayed. If he broke their test, he'd never get another chance. Days turned into weeks. His food supply dwindled. The heat was brutal, the nights bone cold. Flies swarmed his wounds from thorn scratches. Still, John refused to leave. He filmed everything, paw prints in the dust, shredded remains of zebra kills, the glint of eyes in the tall grass. The camera became his shield, the only thing between him and madness. On the 30th day, the pride made its first move. As John filled a water canister near the stream, a low growl froze him mid-breath. Out from the reeds stepped Scarback, a colossal male with one ear torn and a scar running down his shoulder like lightning. Their eyes locked. For what felt like forever, neither moved. Then, with a slow rumble, the lion turned away. It wasn't mercy, it was warning. By day 50, they stopped hiding. The lions followed him at a distance, shadows gliding through the tall grass. Some nights they'd rest just beyond the firelight, tails flicking, watching. John began to talk to them softly, like to wary gods. "I'm not here to harm you," he'd whisper. "I just want to understand." On day 72, his tent was torn open. A young lioness had crept too close, curious. John woke to her paw pressing against the canvas. He didn't scream. He simply lay still, heart thundering. After a moment, she backed away. By day 100, something had changed. The lions no longer circled to kill, they circled to observe. The growls softened into distant huffs, like gruff acknowledgments. John wrote in his journal that night. "They could end me at any moment, yet they don't. Maybe that's their way of saying, I belong here." The terror hadn't ended. But respect had begun. From that fragile truce grew something no one could have imagined. The Ghost Pride, once shadows of death, slowly became his world. Days melted into years. John shed every trace of civilization, shoes, fear, and even the voice of doubt that once whispered leave. By the end of the first year, the lions no longer fled when he approached. He learned their signals, the flick of a tail meaning irritation, a low rumble meaning calm, a short grunt meaning acceptance. His notebook turned into a lexicon of lion language. He began to move when they moved, rest when they rested, and feed when they fed. Scarback, the scarred alpha, became the bridge between worlds. The massive male often stood near John, testing his limits. John learned never to stare too long, never to turn his back, and never to interrupt a meal. Trust in the wild isn't given. It's earned, one breath, one heartbeat at a time. There were moments of terror even in peace. Once, during a hunt, a stampede of wildebeest nearly trampled him. Another time, a lioness defending her cub lunged so close he could feel her breath. But every close call strengthened the invisible thread between them. By year 5, the pride no longer saw him as a threat. Cubs played near his camp. Lionesses would sleep just yards away, their steady breathing blending with the rustle of grass. Sometimes, Scarback would sit beside him at dusk, both watching the horizon blaze orange. In those moments, there were no barriers. Just two living beings bound by respect. John recorded hours of behavior never seen before, morning rituals, playful teaching, even moments of affection. His footage became a window into a world that had always stayed hidden. But for John, it was more than science, it was family. He wrote in his worn-out journal, "I came here to study lions. I ended up learning humanity." 10 years after that first night of terror, he could walk among them barefoot and unarmed. When Scarback brushed his manet against John's arm, it wasn't dominance, it was acknowledgement. He was no longer the man who entered their land. He was one of them. He stood beneath the dying gold of the Serengeti sun, surrounded by a pride that had once tested his courage and finally trusted his heart. After 10 years with them, living in their rhythm, sharing their hunts, whispering gentle commands in the grass at dawn, he still didn't believe he had to leave. But news traveled across oceans. His father had passed away. The world he came from demanded his return. John climbed into his dusty jeep, the engine a small roar in the vast quiet. Around him the land stretched endless and wild. The ghost pride sensed the departure. One by one they emerged from the tall grass at twilight, lionesses, the young males, and then Scarback, older now, the scar across his shoulder faded by time but still visible. The air was thick with hum of insects and the low wind through acacias lived like a chant. As John reversed the vehicle, the pride ringed the jeep. They did not roar. They did not pounce. Instead they stood somber, dignified. Scarback approached the driver's side and brushed his manet gently against John's arm, as if in farewell. A lifetime of trust condensed into one heavy breath. John's hand rested on the closed window. He could have opened it, reached out, but this moment was more than touch. It was respect. He started the engine again, the gears moving slowly. A young cub tucked itself between the lionesses, watching him go. Shadows shifted. The one he had become family to now remained in place, staring until the dust swallowed his rear lights. John felt his chest tighten, guilt, love, awe, and longing entwined. He pressed record on his camera. This was not the departure of a stranger from the wild, it was the exodus of a brother from his pride. As the jeep pulled away, the pride let the night reclaim them. Their silhouettes faded beyond the horizon, one last glance turned back to him. John glanced in the rearview mirror. Scarback's profile receded into darkness but the scar stayed clear, a symbol of survival, of bond, of trust. The engine's hum rose, and with every meter John left behind more than dunes and termite mounds. He left within the heart of the lions a place reserved only for him. The impossible goodbye rang as both an end and a promise, he would return. And though distance would grow, the bond forged in wild predators' territory would not vanish with the tire's dust trail. He drove into the night, the roar of the jeep swallowed by the wild. A man changed forever, leaving a home among the wild ones. The jeep's roar had long faded into memory, but the Serengeti never forgot. 3 years passed. The world changed, cities rose, screens ruled, and John Miller, once the man who lived with lions, found himself lost among human noise. He tried to teach again, to lecture about trust and coexistence, but the rhythm of the wild still pulsed inside him. Every night he'd dream of golden plains and the deep rumble of Scarback's roar echoing like a heartbeat. So one morning, he returned. The air was different, drier, quieter. The camp where he had once lived was half buried in dust, his notebooks eaten by time. But the horizon looked the same, endless, alive, waiting. He lifted his camera once more, the same one that had captured his first night among them. The red light blinked on. Then he called out. A single low call, the sound Scarback had once taught him meant friend. At first, nothing. Just wind. Then, movement. Shadows in the grass. The whisper of paws. And suddenly, from the far edge of the plain, the ghost pride emerged. The lions broke into a run, fast, powerful, unstoppable. Dust exploded around them. John's heartbeat thundered. The world watching through the camera feed thought it was the end, that after years away, the ghost pride had turned on him. But then, Scarback slowed. The great lion, greyer now, scar-faded but proud, walked forward alone. John dropped to his knees. The distance between man and beast disappeared. Scarback's head lowered, pressing his manet against John's chest, the same gesture from that impossible goodbye. The pride surrounded them, tails brushing his shoulders, soft huffs and low rumbles filling the air. It wasn't aggression. It was recognition. John's camera kept rolling. Tears streaked his face. Around him, the lions moved like family returning home. Days later, the footage hit the internet. Millions watched in stunned silence as a man embraced the wild, not out of dominance, but love. Headlines called it the reunion that broke the internet. But for John, it wasn't about fame. It was proof that trust, once earned, transcends time, distance, even species. In the heart of the Serengeti, surrounded by those he once feared, John Miller wasn't a visitor anymore. He was home.